Three figures wandered through the edge of a snow-covered forest. A stray German shepherd mother and her two young puppies. For nearly a year, the mother had taught them the same lesson: stay away from people, trust no one, survive on your own. But that morning the puppies did something she never expected. Instead of following her back toward town, they ran deeper into the woods. There, beneath a stand of frozen pines, lay an injured former Navy SEAL, alone, unable to stand, miles from help, as another winter storm rolled across the mountains. The puppies refused to leave him. The mother dog wanted to, yet as the snow grew heavier and daylight began to fade, she found herself facing a choice she had spent years avoiding. Would she walk away and protect her own family? Or would two curious puppies lead her towards something she thought she had lost forever? This is a fictional story created for storytelling purposes. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from today. Drop your country in the comments below. Winter had settled heavily over Cedar Ridge, Montana. Snow rested on rooftops, fence posts, and pine branches, as if the entire town had been wrapped in a quiet, white blanket. Beyond the last row of houses, where the forest began to swallow the landscape, an old weather-beaten barn leaned slightly against years of wind and neglect. Most people barely noticed it anymore. To them, it was just another forgotten structure near the edge of town. To Daisy, it was home. The German shepherd mother was approximately 5 years old. Her sable coat had once been thick and glossy, but months of surviving outdoors had left it rough in places. Small scars hid beneath her fur. One nick marked the edge of her left ear. Another crossed the bridge of her nose. Neither came from fights she had started. Life had simply taught her lessons she never asked to learn. Daisy had not always lived alone. More than a year earlier, she had belonged to someone. At least, she thought she had. Then, one afternoon, while carrying puppies in her belly, she had been left behind in a parking lot outside a grocery store 2 towns away. She had waited until sunset, then midnight, then sunrise. The car never returned. Animals did not think about betrayal the same way humans did. They did not sit awake replaying conversations. They did not search for explanations. But they remembered. Daisy remembered. And ever since that day, she had carried one simple truth inside her heart. People leave. That truth shaped everything she taught her puppies. Buddy and Molly were now nearly 8 weeks old. They looked almost identical at first glance, both carrying the black and tan markings of their mother. Yet their personalities could not have been more different. Buddy was larger and stronger. His oversized paws suggested he would someday become a very large dog. He approached every new discovery as if the world had been built specifically for his entertainment. Fallen leaves, squirrels, snowdrifts, old boots, and fluttering birds all deserved investigation. Molly was smaller, slimmer, and quicker. Her ears had begun standing up before Buddy's. She noticed details others missed. While Buddy charged toward adventure, Molly often paused first, studying things with bright, intelligent eyes. Together, they exhausted Daisy daily. That morning, Buddy was attempting to catch snowflakes. Molly was trying to figure out where the snowflakes came from. Daisy watched them from the entrance of the barn. The puppies wrestled, tumbled, and chased each other across the frozen ground. Every few minutes, Daisy intervened. Not because she wanted to spoil their fun, because danger existed everywhere. Humans, roads, coyotes. The world was not as kind as puppies believed. Buddy suddenly stopped and looked toward the town. A man was walking along the distant sidewalk carrying a paper bag. The puppy immediately took several curious steps forward. A low growl stopped him. Buddy froze. Daisy stood. Her ears were forward, her eyes fixed on the stranger. Only when the man disappeared around a corner did she relax. Buddy tilted his head. Molly copied him. Daisy walked toward them and nudged both puppies gently back toward the barn. It was a lesson she repeated every day. Stay away from people. Never follow strangers. Never trust what looks easy. The puppies obeyed. For approximately 30 seconds. Then Buddy discovered a stick. By noon, they had forgotten the lesson entirely. Humans often believed wisdom could be taught quickly. Life rarely worked that way. Across Cedar Ridge, another soul carried lessons he could not seem to forget. Ryan Walker lived alone in a cabin overlooking Blackwater Lake. At 45 years old, Ryan still carried the physical presence of the Navy SEAL he had once been. He stood over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and powerfully built. Years of military training had left their mark on his posture and movements. Even while doing something as simple as pouring coffee, he moved with quiet efficiency. His dark brown hair was cut short. A few silver strands had begun appearing near his temples, long before most men his age expected them. His jawline remained strong and angular. A neatly trimmed beard framed a face that looked older than 45 whenever he stopped smiling. The problem was that Ryan rarely smiled anymore. 2 years earlier, his wife Emily had died after a long battle with illness. The loss had changed him in ways he struggled to explain. Before Emily became sick, Ryan had been the kind of man people naturally gravitated toward. He volunteered. He attended community events. He helped neighbors repair fences and clear snow. After Emily's death, the world slowly became quieter. Not because people disappeared, because Ryan did. He sold most of what they owned. He stopped attending gatherings. He answered fewer calls. Eventually, solitude became easier than conversation. The cabin overlooking Blackwater Lake was supposed to be temporary, yet 2 years later he was still there. Every week Ryan followed the same ritual. He walked to a weathered wooden bench positioned near the frozen shoreline. The bench itself was unremarkable, old, faded, slightly crooked. But it had been Emily's favorite place. During summer evenings, they used to sit there together, watching sunlight disappear across the water. Ryan still came alone, every week, without fail. Some griefs did not heal. They simply learned new ways to live beside a person. That afternoon, Ryan sat on the bench while snow drifted across the lake. A pair of ducks moved slowly near a patch of unfrozen water. The world was quiet. The kind of quiet that could feel peaceful one day and unbearably lonely the next. Ryan looked toward the opposite shoreline. For a moment he imagined Emily sitting beside him, not as a ghost, not as a vision, just a memory strong enough to feel real. He found himself smiling. Then the smile faded. Memories were strange companions. They comforted and wounded at the same time. Back near the barn, Daisy had successfully guided Buddy and Molly through another day without major disasters, which, considering the puppies, counted as a victory. As evening approached, she curled beside them while cold winds moved through the trees. Buddy slept first. Molly lasted another 10 minutes before exhaustion won. Daisy remained awake. Mothers often did. She listened to distant sounds carried through the forest, branches creaking, wind moving through pines, a truck somewhere in town. Everything seemed normal, yet something unsettled her. Animals sometimes sensed change long before humans noticed it. The following morning arrived beneath dark skies. Snow began falling before dawn. By sunrise, thick clouds had swallowed the mountains surrounding Cedar Ridge. The storm moved quickly, faster than weather forecasts had predicted. At his cabin, Ryan prepared for his usual walk. Most people would have stayed home. Ryan wasn't most people. Routine had become one of the few things keeping his life organized. He zipped his winter jacket, stepped outside, and headed toward the lake. Snow continued falling around him. The wooden bench waited in the distance. Far away, hidden near the forest edge, Daisy watched the storm gathering strength. Buddy and Molly bounced through fresh snow without concern. To them, it was another adventure. To Daisy, it felt different. The wind carried something unfamiliar, something uneasy. Hours later, snow covered the roads. The lake disappeared behind a curtain of white. The bench stood empty. And when evening approached, A troubling realization began spreading through Cedar Ridge. Ryan Walker had not returned home from his usual walk. The storm deepened overnight. By the following day, Cedar Ridge seemed smaller beneath the endless snowfall. Roads disappeared beneath fresh drifts. Pine trees bent beneath the weight of ice. The world had become quieter, but not peaceful. There was a difference between silence and absence, and somewhere beyond the forest, absence had begun to worry people. Ryan Walker had not returned home. At first, no one panicked. Ryan was known for disappearing into long, solitary walks. Sometimes he spent hours near Blackwater Lake. Sometimes he explored old logging trails through the forest. Most people assumed the storm had delayed him, but by midday, concern had begun replacing assumption. At the town diner, an elderly waitress named Martha Jenkins glanced repeatedly through the frosted windows. Martha was 71, short and round-faced, with silver curls tucked beneath a knitted cap and kind blue eyes that rarely missed details. She had known Ryan since he first moved to Cedar Ridge. "He always comes in on Thursdays," she told the owner while wiping a coffee mug. "Always." Today was Thursday. Ryan's seat remained empty. Meanwhile, several miles away, Daisy had other concerns. Her puppies had discovered the magic of snow. To Buddy, every drift was a mountain waiting to be conquered. To Molly, every track crossing the snow was a mystery waiting to be solved. The morning had begun normally enough. Daisy led them toward a clearing near the forest edge, where she often searched for scraps or small animals. She stayed alert, ears constantly moving, eyes scanning for danger. The puppies did not. Buddy launched himself into a pile of snow deeper than his body and immediately disappeared. Molly spent several minutes studying the footprints of a rabbit before deciding to follow them. Daisy tolerated their curiosity because puppies needed to learn. Still, she never allowed them far from sight. At least, that was usually true. Then Molly noticed something unusual. Large footprints. Not deer, not coyote. Human. The tracks cut through the fresh snow, heading deeper toward the forest surrounding Blackwater Lake. Molly lowered her nose, sniffed, then followed. Buddy immediately followed her. Adventure was always better together. Within minutes they had wandered farther than they ever had before. The forest felt different here, older, quieter. The snow beneath the trees was untouched except for the single trail of footprints. Buddy occasionally bounded ahead before returning. Molly remained focused on the scent. Neither realized how far they had traveled. Neither realized Daisy was no longer behind them. The footprints eventually reached the frozen edge of Blackwater Lake. There the trail changed. The snow became disturbed, broken, scattered, as if someone had slipped. Molly stopped. Buddy stopped beside her. Ahead, near the edge of a steep embankment, the snow looked torn apart. Then Molly heard something. A faint sound. Not a voice, not exactly. Breathing. The puppies moved closer. At the bottom of the slope lay a man, Ryan Walker. The fall had happened hours earlier. The storm had hidden the evidence. A section of ice near the shoreline had cracked beneath his weight. Ryan had stumbled backward, lost his footing on the slope, and crashed down through rocks, roots, and frozen brush. His left leg was twisted awkwardly beneath him. His shoulder had slammed against a fallen log. Blood from a cut above his eyebrow had dried against his skin. He was alive, but barely awake. Buddy tilted his head. The giant creature was lying still. Humans slept often, that much he knew. Molly approached cautiously. Ryan's eyes remained closed. The puppy nudged his hand. No response. Buddy immediately tried a different strategy. He licked Ryan's face. Once, twice, 3 times. Ryan groaned. The sound startled both puppies. Buddy jumped backward. Molly barked. A tiny bark. Ryan slowly opened his eyes. Everything hurt. His leg, his shoulder, his ribs. Even breathing felt difficult. At first he thought he was dreaming. 2 German Shepherd puppies stood directly in front of him. One was barking, the other appeared deeply concerned. Ryan blinked. The puppies remained. "Well," he whispered through cracked lips. "That's unexpected." Buddy wagged his tail. Molly stepped closer. Ryan tried sitting up. Pain exploded through his leg. He immediately fell back into the snow. A sharp curse escaped him. The puppies watched carefully. Ryan laughed despite himself. It wasn't much of a laugh, more a breath carrying traces of amusement. But it was still the first genuine laugh he had made in weeks. "You two picked a strange place to play." Buddy interpreted this as an invitation. The puppy climbed directly onto Ryan's chest. Ryan groaned again. "Okay, maybe not that close." Far above the slope, Daisy finally noticed the silence. Too much silence. No barking, no crashing through snow, no Buddy, no Molly. Her head lifted immediately. Every muscle tightened. Mothers recognized danger long before they saw it. She searched the clearing. Nothing. The barn. Nothing. The nearby trees. Nothing. Then she found the scent, fresh, leading toward the lake. Panic arrived instantly. The old fear returned. The parking lot, the waiting, the abandonment. Loss had once stolen everything from her. Now her puppies were missing. Daisy ran. Snow sprayed behind her paws as she pushed deeper into the forest. The trail wasn't difficult to follow. The puppies had left chaos wherever they went. Broken snow, tiny paw prints, scattered scents. Yet as Daisy followed them, another scent appeared. Human. Her ears flattened. The smell triggered memories she never wanted. Hands, voices, doors closing, cars driving away. Still, she kept running, because fear for her puppies outweighed fear of people. At the bottom of the slope, Ryan was beginning to understand his situation. His leg would not support weight. His shoulder barely moved. The storm was worsening, and his phone had disappeared somewhere during the fall. The reality settled heavily inside him. No one knew where he was. The puppies continued sitting beside him. Occasionally, Molly inspected his face. Buddy repeatedly attempted to steal one of Ryan's gloves. Somehow their presence made the situation feel less hopeless. Then Molly suddenly froze, her ears lifted. Buddy noticed too. Both puppies turned toward the forest. Ryan followed their gaze. A figure emerged between the snow-covered trees, large, powerful, silent. The German shepherd stepped from the forest like a shadow. Daisy stopped 20 yards away. Her posture immediately changed, protective, alert, ready. Ryan understood the situation instantly. The puppies belonged to her, and she did not trust him. Neither moved. Snow drifted between them. The puppies ran toward Daisy. Relief flooded through her body so quickly it almost weakened her legs. She nudged Molly, then Buddy, checking both, counting them, making sure they were safe. Only after that did she look back at Ryan. The wounded man remained where he was, not approaching, not threatening, just watching. For a long moment neither side looked away. Ryan saw caution, pain, experience. The same things he often saw in his own reflection. Daisy saw a stranger, but not a predator. Not yet. The wind howled across the lake. Snow thickened around them. And for the first time, Daisy truly noticed the injured man lying helpless beneath the storm. The man her puppies had chosen to stay beside. By late afternoon, the storm had transformed the forest into a world of moving white shadows. Snow drifted between the pines in endless curtains, erasing tracks almost as quickly as they appeared. The temperature continued to fall. The daylight itself seemed weaker, as if the sun had surrendered to the storm hours before sunset. Ryan Walker sat half-buried against the base of a fallen spruce tree, forcing himself to stay conscious. The pain had become familiar. His injured leg throbbed with every heartbeat. His shoulder felt like fire whenever he moved. The cut above his eye had stopped bleeding, but dried blood tightened against his skin. Years of military training had taught him something important. Pain was information. Panic was the enemy. Ryan focused on information. His leg was injured but not completely useless. His shoulder hurt, but it still moved. He was cold but not yet confused. Those facts mattered. He had survived worse situations during his years as a Navy SEAL. At least that was what he kept telling himself, not because he fully believed it, because giving up started with allowing hopeless thoughts to become comfortable. Several yards away, Daisy stood motionless. The German Shepherd mother's entire body remained positioned between Ryan and her puppies. Her ears were forward, her amber eyes never left him. Every instinct told her to take Buddy and Molly and leave. Humans brought disappointment, humans brought danger, humans left. Yet the puppies refused to cooperate with her plan. Buddy had already decided Ryan was interesting. Molly had decided Ryan was sad. Neither puppy saw a threat. Ryan noticed the tension immediately. "Don't worry," he said quietly. His voice sounded rough from cold air and exhaustion. "I'm not coming any closer." Daisy did not move. Ryan wouldn't have trusted him either, not if their positions were reversed. Buddy slowly wandered back toward him. The puppy stopped several feet away and sat down. Ryan smiled faintly. "You again." Buddy's tail immediately started wagging. Molly followed moments later. Unlike her brother, she approached cautiously. She sat beside Buddy and stared directly at Ryan's face, studying him, evaluating him. Ryan almost laughed. The puppy reminded him of someone. Emily. His wife had always looked at people that way, patiently, like she was reading pages nobody else could see. The memory hurt. Not sharply anymore, more like an old scar beneath cold weather. Ryan found himself speaking without realizing it. "My wife would have liked you to." The puppies listened with complete seriousness. Daisy remained standing, watching, waiting. Ryan looked toward the darkening sky. He wasn't really talking to the puppies. He was talking because silence had become too heavy. "I used to think being alone was easier." His breath drifted into the cold air. "Turns out easier isn't always better." Buddy tilted his head. Ryan smiled again. A real smile this time. Small, but real. Across Cedar Ridge, concern was growing. At the sheriff's office, Sheriff Tom Reynolds studied a map spread across a wooden desk. Tom Reynolds was 58 years old, broad-shouldered, with weathered skin and a thick gray mustache that made him look permanently serious. He had spent 30 years working in rural law enforcement. Most of that time had taught him patience. The remaining years had taught him caution. He knew Ryan Walker. Everyone did. Ryan wasn't careless. If Ryan hadn't returned home, something was wrong. Standing nearby was Deputy Lisa Grant. Lisa was 32, tall and athletic, with dark blonde hair usually tied into a practical ponytail. A scar beneath her chin hinted at an old horseback riding accident from her teenage years. Unlike Tom, she still possessed the impatience of someone who believed every problem should have a solution. "We need to keep searching," Lisa said. Tom glanced toward the window. Outside, the storm had become vicious. Visibility was almost gone. "No," he answered. Lisa frowned. "No? If I send volunteers out now, I might lose more people." Neither liked the decision, but both understood it. Sometimes responsibility meant choosing the least terrible option. The search would have to wait. Back in the forest, daylight continued fading. Ryan noticed it before the dogs did. Humans measured time differently. He understood exactly what darkness meant. Darkness meant colder temperatures, less visibility, fewer options. His military training automatically began calculating probabilities. None of them were encouraging. He carefully shifted his injured leg. Pain exploded upward. His jaw tightened. Daisy immediately reacted. The German Shepherd stiffened. Not because she feared him, because she recognized pain. Animals understood weakness instinctively. Ryan lowered his head for a moment. The world tilted slightly. That worried him more than the injury itself. Exhaustion was beginning to catch up. He needed movement. Movement meant warmth. Warmth meant survival. The problem was obvious. Standing seemed impossible. Still, Ryan had never been particularly good at accepting impossible. Years earlier, during Navy SEAL training, one instructor had told him something he never forgot. Most people quit long before their bodies actually fail. Ryan hated inspirational sayings, but he hated surrender more. He planted one hand into the snow, then another. Slowly, painfully, he pushed himself upward. His injured leg immediately buckled. He crashed sideways. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. Buddy barked. Molly jumped backward. Daisy took a step forward. Ryan lay there for several seconds, breathing hard. Snow clung to his jacket. His entire body screamed at him to stay down. The snow felt strangely comfortable. That frightened him. People freezing to death often described a dangerous temptation. Rest. Just rest. Ryan recognized the feeling immediately. No. The word escaped through clenched teeth. He rolled onto one knee, then another, again, slowly, painfully, stubbornly. Ryan rose, only for a few seconds, but he stood. The effort left him trembling. Yet, something changed. Daisy noticed it first. This injured human wasn't behaving like prey. Prey collapsed. Prey surrendered. This human kept standing, even when standing hurt. Something about that felt familiar. She had spent the last year doing exactly the same thing, one difficult day after another, one winter after another, one disappointment after another. Keep moving. Keep surviving. Ryan lowered himself carefully against the tree again, breathing heavily. The brief victory had cost almost everything he had left. Still, he was smiling. "See that?" he said toward Buddy. "Told you I wasn't done yet." Buddy wagged his tail enthusiastically. Molly sat beside him. For the first time, the puppies chose to remain near Ryan instead of returning immediately to Daisy. The mother watched carefully. She disliked it. Yet she didn't call them back. The forest had become darker now. Wind pushed fresh snow through the trees. The temperature continued dropping. Ryan followed the movement of the clouds overhead. Years of outdoor survival training left little room for optimism. Another wave of weather was approaching, a stronger one. He could feel it. The realization settled heavily inside him. Night was coming. The storm was worsening. His injuries were slowing him down, and remaining exposed in the open forest would eventually kill him. Ryan looked toward the endless rows of snow-covered pines, then toward the gathering darkness. For the first time since the fall, he stopped thinking about rescue. He started thinking about shelter, because if he didn't find one before nightfall, he might not survive long enough for anyone to find him at all. The storm arrived in earnest before the sun disappeared completely. By late afternoon, the forest no longer looked familiar. The distant mountains had vanished behind a wall of snow. Wind swept through the pines with a low, mournful sound that reminded Ryan Walker of distant ocean storms he had heard during deployments years ago. The difference was that the ocean had always offered an escape route. The forest offered none. Ryan sat beneath the spruce tree, watching the sky darken faster than it should. His military training kept calculating possibilities. Every scenario ended the same way. Without shelter, the night would become dangerous. Without movement, hypothermia would arrive sooner than he wanted to admit. His body already felt heavier, his hands slower, his thoughts occasionally drifting before snapping back into focus. Nearby, Buddy had discovered another mission. The puppy was digging enthusiastically through a snowbank for reasons known only to himself. Molly remained beside Ryan, quietly observing everything. Unlike her brother, Molly seemed to sense when something serious was happening. Daisy stood a short distance away. She still had not fully relaxed. Her protective instincts remained stronger than any growing curiosity about the injured human. Yet something subtle had changed. Earlier, Daisy had watched Ryan like a threat. Now she watched him like a question. Ryan noticed. Animals were honest. They didn't pretend. They didn't hide discomfort behind polite smiles. If Daisy distrusted him, she showed it. If that distrust weakened, she showed that too. Buddy suddenly barked, a sharp, excited sound. Ryan lifted his head. The puppy was no longer digging. Instead, Buddy was running uphill through the trees, then stopping, then running back, then turning around again. "What's gotten into you?" Ryan muttered. Buddy barked again. Molly immediately followed. The two puppies disappeared between snow-covered pines. Seconds later, they returned, then left again, then returned again. Ryan frowned. His tired mind struggled to understand. The puppies weren't playing. They were trying to communicate something. Years of field operations had taught Ryan to pay attention to patterns. Patterns kept people alive. Buddy repeated the behavior a fourth time. Run uphill, look back, wait, run again. Ryan slowly pushed himself upright. The movement sent pain through his injured leg. He nearly collapsed. Buddy barked impatiently. Ryan stared, then smiled, despite himself. "You want me to follow you?" The puppy barked again. Apparently, that was correct. For the first time all day, Daisy moved first. The German shepherd mother walked toward the direction Buddy kept indicating. She paused once, looked back toward Ryan, then continued. Ryan's pulse quickened slightly. Not from fear. Hope. Animals often noticed things humans missed. Maybe they had found something. He grabbed a low branch for support and painfully began moving. Every step felt like work. Buddy stayed ahead. Molly remained beside Ryan. Daisy moved farther in front. The arrangement developed naturally, almost like a strange little team. The journey wasn't long, perhaps only a few hundred yards. But for Ryan, it felt endless. The storm intensified. Snow struck his face. His injured leg threatened to buckle repeatedly. More than once he considered stopping. Each time he looked ahead. And each time he saw Buddy waiting. The puppy never moved too far, never abandoned him. Eventually the trees opened slightly. Ryan stopped. There, hidden among old pines and half-buried beneath years of neglect, stood a hunting cabin. Small, weathered, forgotten. The structure leaned slightly to one side. The roof sagged beneath snow. Several boards had fallen away from the walls. Yet it still stood, and standing was enough. Ryan exhaled. For the first time since the accident, genuine relief washed through him. The cabin wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. It only needed to keep out the wind. Buddy proudly trotted toward the door, as if he had personally built the place. "You found it," Ryan whispered. The puppy's tail wagged so hard his entire body moved. The front door resisted at first. Years of snow and moisture had swollen the wood. Ryan pushed harder. The door groaned, then opened. Cold darkness waited inside. But darkness was better than exposure. The cabin smelled of dust, old timber, and forgotten seasons. A rusted stove occupied one corner. A narrow wooden bunk sat against the wall. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Someone had abandoned the place long ago, yet the walls remained solid. Most importantly, the wind immediately became quieter. Ryan almost collapsed with gratitude. He eased himself onto the floor. Pain radiated through his leg, but he was alive and sheltered. Outside, the storm continued raging. Inside, the world became smaller, safer. For several minutes, nobody moved. Ryan simply sat and listened. The sound of breathing, the distant howl of wind beyond the walls, the soft movements of the dogs. Buddy explored every inch of the cabin. Molly investigated more carefully. Daisy remained near the doorway, still uncertain, still evaluating. Then something happened that surprised Ryan. The puppies curled up near him, and Daisy didn't stop them. The German Shepherd mother watched silently. Her ears remained alert, but she allowed it. A small decision, a meaningful one. Ryan noticed immediately. Trust wasn't built through dramatic moments. It grew through tiny permissions, and Daisy had just offered one. Night settled fully outside. The cabin darkened. Ryan found an old lantern on a shelf. To his surprise, it still contained fuel. A few minutes later, warm yellow light flickered across the room. The atmosphere changed instantly. The cabin no longer felt abandoned. It felt inhabited.
Ryan leaned against the wall. Buddy fell asleep beside his injured leg. Molly curled near his boot. Daisy rested several feet away, close enough to watch, far enough to leave. Ryan found himself talking, not because anyone expected it, because silence had become lonely. "You know," he said quietly, looking toward the puppies, "Emily always wanted a dog." The puppies listened, or appeared to. Ryan smiled faintly. "Actually, she wanted 3. His voice softened. Memories returned. Not the painful hospital memories, not the final weeks, the earlier ones, the good ones. The memories he had spent too much time avoiding. He told the puppies about summer fishing trips, about Emily laughing when he burned dinner, about the time she convinced him to dance at a community festival even though he hated dancing. The stories came slowly at first, then more easily. Hours passed. Ryan barely noticed. The puppies eventually slept. Even Daisy seemed calmer. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, Ryan kept talking. Perhaps because no one interrupted. Perhaps because grief sounded different when spoken aloud. Eventually his voice grew quiet, then disappeared altogether. For a long time he simply stared at the lantern. His thoughts drifted toward Emily again, not as a memory, as an absence, a space in the world that could never be filled. Something inside him finally cracked. The tears arrived without warning, not dramatic, not loud, just silent tears running down a tired face. Ryan lowered his head, ashamed of nothing, too exhausted to hide. Across the room, Daisy opened her eyes. The German Shepherd watched him. She didn't understand human words. She didn't understand death. She didn't understand marriage, but she understood loss. And for the first time, Daisy saw something familiar in the man. Not weakness, not danger. Loneliness. The same loneliness she carried every day since being abandoned. The cabin remained silent, except for the wind outside. Ryan sat beneath the lantern light, with tears on his face. And across the room, Daisy quietly watched him through the darkness. The storm did not end. It simply changed. During the night, the violent winds eased slightly, but heavy snow continued falling beyond the walls of the old hunting cabin. The forest remained buried beneath white silence. Every few hours, the cabin creaked softly, reminding its temporary occupants how old and fragile it truly was. Ryan Walker woke before dawn. Years in the military had trained his body to rise early, regardless of comfort. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then pain reminded him. His injured leg throbbed beneath a blanket of dull ache. His shoulder felt stiff. His neck protested every movement. Yet he was alive. That alone felt significant. The lantern had burned out sometime during the night, leaving only pale morning light filtering through the frosted windows. Buddy was still asleep. The puppy had somehow rolled against Ryan's side during the night, and now snored softly without concern for personal space. Ryan looked down and smiled. Molly lay curled near the old stove. Daisy rested closer than she had the previous evening, not beside him, not yet, but no longer near the doorway. The distance between them had quietly shortened. Ryan noticed. Trust often moved in inches rather than miles. Outside, the wind pushed snow against the walls. Inside, for the first time in years, Ryan did not feel entirely alone. That realization surprised him. The thought lingered long after he stood and carefully tested his injured leg. The pain remained sharp, but manageable, at least for now. Buddy woke moments later and immediately began demanding attention. The puppy stretched dramatically before placing both front paws on Ryan's knee. Ryan laughed. "You've got excellent timing." Buddy seemed pleased by the compliment. The simple interaction stirred something unfamiliar. Not happiness, exactly. Something softer. Something he had spent years avoiding. Connection. Across the cabin, Daisy watched. She had spent months studying people from a distance. Most humans moved quickly, spoke loudly, wanted things, expected things. This man was different. He never reached toward her, never tried to force trust, never acted frustrated when she refused to come closer. He simply existed, the way injured animals sometimes existed after surviving difficult winters, quietly, carefully. Ryan settled against the wall again. The puppies soon gathered near him, perhaps because the cabin was warm, perhaps because puppies naturally gravitated toward company, or perhaps because loneliness recognized loneliness. For several minutes, nobody moved. Then Ryan spoke, not because anyone asked, because memories had become impossible to ignore. "You know what the funny thing is?" he said softly. Buddy tilted his head. Molly watched attentively. Ryan smiled. The bench wasn't supposed to matter. His eyes drifted toward the snowy window. Outside, somewhere beyond miles of forest and storm, Blackwater Lake remained hidden beneath winter. "The first time I met Emily was completely ordinary." The words felt strange, like opening a door he had kept locked too long. "It was 15 years ago." His voice grew quieter. "There was a summer festival by the lake." The memory appeared vividly. Emily standing beside the wooden bench, a paper cup of lemonade in one hand, a stubborn strand of dark blonde hair constantly blowing across her face. Ryan remembered laughing because she kept trying to fix it. He remembered how annoyed she looked. He remembered thinking she was beautiful before they had exchanged a single word. The puppies listened. Daisy listened too, not because she understood every sound, but because emotion carried meaning beyond language. Ryan continued. "She spilled lemonade on my boots." Buddy barked. Ryan chuckled. "Exactly." The laugh came easier this time. Then she spent 10 minutes apologizing. For a moment, his eyes brightened. The years seemed to fall away. "The next day, we met at the same bench." He paused. "The day after that, too." The cabin grew quiet. Snow tapped softly against the windows. Ryan stared into the distance. "It became our place." His voice lowered further. "When life got difficult, we went there. When something good happened, we went there. When we argued, we somehow ended up there too." The smile faded slowly. "Then she got sick." The words landed heavily, not dramatic, simply true. Ryan lowered his eyes. The old grief remained, different now, but still present. "At first we thought treatment would work." He rubbed his hands together. The motion had become a habit whenever memories hurt. "Then we thought maybe we'd get more time." His jaw tightened slightly. "Then eventually we stopped talking about years." The puppies remained still, even Buddy. Ryan exhaled slowly. "The last time Emily sat on that bench, she couldn't walk there by herself." The image returned with painful clarity. Her hand in his, her smile, her determination to pretend everything was normal. "She told me something before we left." Ryan looked toward the ceiling, as if searching for the exact words. "Don't turn this place into a grave." Silence followed. The sentence remained suspended between memory and reality. Ryan swallowed. "I promised her I wouldn't." Outside, the storm whispered against the walls. Inside, Ryan finally admitted something he had never spoken aloud. "I broke that promise." The confession surprised even him. Nobody had ever asked. Nobody had ever known. After Emily died, Ryan kept returning to the bench every week, sometimes twice, not because it helped, because he couldn't stop.
The bench had become less about remembering Emily and more about refusing to move forward. Ryan stared at his hands. For 2 years he had convinced himself he was honoring her memory. Now he wondered whether he had simply been hiding inside it. Across the room, Daisy watched carefully. The German Shepherd understood loss differently than humans. She did not revisit old conversations. She did not replay memories. Yet she understood what happened when pain became part of someone's identity. For months after being abandoned, Daisy had waited, then searched, then waited again. Eventually, survival forced her forward, not because she stopped hurting, because her puppies needed her. Ryan's pain felt familiar, not identical, but familiar. The realization unsettled her. The man no longer smelled like danger. He smelled like sorrow. And Daisy knew sorrow. The day slowly passed. Snow continued falling. The storm still blocked any chance of leaving, yet something inside the cabin had changed. The walls felt less empty, the silence less heavy, the distance between human and dog slightly smaller. As evening approached, Buddy grew tired. The puppy climbed awkwardly onto the old blanket beside Ryan. Then, after several failed attempts to find the perfect sleeping position, he curled directly against Ryan's side. Ryan laughed softly. "You really don't understand personal boundaries." Buddy was already asleep. Molly settled nearby. Ryan gently rested one hand beside the sleeping puppy. Across the room, Daisy watched, her ears lifted. For a brief moment, Ryan wondered if she would intervene, if she would call Buddy back, if she would remind him that trust had limits. Instead, Daisy lowered her head onto her paws and closed her eyes. She allowed it. For the first time since finding Ryan in the forest, Daisy made no effort to separate her puppy from the man. Outside, winter continued raging. Inside, Buddy slept peacefully, curled against Ryan. And Daisy did nothing to stop it. The storm should have ended by now. That was what Ryan Walker kept telling himself. 3 days earlier, he would have expected the weather to clear, rescue teams to regroup, and life to return to something resembling normal. Instead, the snow continued falling over Cedar Ridge like an endless punishment from the sky. The forest outside the hunting cabin had disappeared behind layers of drifting white. Every window showed the same thing: snow, wind, isolation. Inside the cabin, a different problem was growing: food, or rather, the lack of it. Ryan sat near the cold stove, counting what remained in his backpack: 2 protein bars, half a bottle of water, nothing else. The realization settled heavily in his chest. His military experience taught him how to calculate survival. The answer wasn't encouraging. Buddy and Molly still had enough energy to play occasionally, but even Ryan noticed the difference. Their movements had become slower. Their naps lasted longer. The puppies were growing. Growing creatures needed food. Daisy knew it too. The German Shepherd mother had spent most of the previous day hunting unsuccessfully through deep snow. Small animals were harder to find after a storm. Every failed search meant wasted energy. She returned to the cabin carrying nothing. The puppies greeted her anyway. Buddy immediately bounced toward her. Molly followed. Neither blamed her. Neither understood scarcity. Only Daisy understood. Ryan watched quietly. The expression in Daisy's eyes reminded him of soldiers he had once served beside. Not fear, responsibility. The burden of being responsible for others. That burden changed people, and apparently dogs too. The next morning, Ryan woke shaking. At first he thought it was cold. Then he realized something worse. His forehead burned. His body ached in ways unrelated to the fall. Infection. The cut near his temple had become swollen. His injured shoulder felt hotter than it should. Ryan touched his skin. The fever was undeniable. "Perfect," he muttered. Buddy lifted his head. The puppy immediately noticed something was wrong. Animals often did. Ryan tried standing. The cabin tilted. A wave of dizziness hit him hard enough to force him back down. His breathing grew heavier. His thoughts felt slower. That frightened him more than the injury. A clear mind had always been one of his greatest strengths. Now even thinking required effort. Across the cabin, Daisy watched carefully. For several days she had observed Ryan. She had watched him endure pain, watched him protect the puppies from falling debris when part of the roof shed snow, watched him give Buddy the last piece of a protein bar instead of eating it himself. Daisy didn't understand sacrifice the way humans described it, but she understood behavior. Ryan's actions never matched the memory she carried of the human who abandoned her. That human had taken. Ryan gave. The difference mattered. Outside Cedar Ridge, the search had nearly ended. Sheriff Tom Reynolds sat inside the town meeting room reviewing weather reports. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. The last several days had aged him. Across the table sat Deputy Lisa Grant. Neither looked happy. "We've covered every accessible trail," Lisa said quietly. Tom rubbed his forehead. The words tasted bitter. "I know." Neither wanted to say what came next, but reality rarely cared about emotions. The storm had trapped search crews repeatedly. Volunteers were exhausted. Equipment was beginning to fail. Even experienced rescuers had limits. Lisa stared toward the window. "People are starting to think he's gone." Tom didn't answer immediately, because he had started wondering the same thing. Back in the cabin, Ryan's condition worsened throughout the afternoon. The fever climbed. His face became pale. Sweat formed despite the cold. Several times he drifted asleep without meaning to. Each time he woke, confused. The puppies stayed close. Buddy curled beside him. Molly rested near his feet. Daisy remained awake, watching. Always watching. As darkness approached, Ryan opened his eyes and saw the 3 dogs staring at him. The sight almost made him smile. "You know," he whispered weakly, "this isn't exactly how I pictured retirement." Buddy wagged his tail. Molly moved closer. Ryan's smile faded. The truth was difficult to ignore now. If nobody came soon, all 4 of them would be in danger, not just him, the puppies, Daisy, everyone. For the first time since entering the cabin, Ryan felt genuine fear. Not fear of dying. He had made peace with mortality long ago. Fear of becoming the reason others suffered. His gaze drifted toward Daisy. The German Shepherd mother sat near the doorway, silent, thinking. At least it looked like thinking. Ryan closed his eyes. "If you get the chance," he murmured, "take them and go." Daisy didn't move. Ryan laughed weakly. "Yeah, I know. You weren't asking." Night arrived fully. The cabin grew darker. The storm outside intensified once again. Wind slammed against the walls. Snow struck the windows. The entire structure seemed to tremble. Buddy and Molly eventually fell asleep. Ryan drifted in and out of fevered dreams. Images blurred together. Emily, the lake, the bench, snow, voices. At some point he stopped knowing whether his eyes were open or closed. But Daisy remained awake. The mother dog listens to every sound, every creak, every gust of wind, every strained breath coming from Ryan. She looked at her sleeping puppies, then toward the injured man, then back toward her puppies. The choice was impossible. Everything in her past told her the same thing. Never trust humans. Never depend on them. Never go looking for them. Humans abandoned. Humans disappeared. Humans hurt. Yet another truth had slowly emerged over the last few days. If Ryan died here, the puppies might die too. If food disappeared completely, they all might. For months, Daisy had survived by trusting nobody. Now, survival demanded something she hated. Faith. Not faith in a specific person. Faith that some humans were different. Faith that help might still exist. The realization made her restless. She stood, walked toward the doorway, stopped, looked back.
Buddy slept peacefully. Molly slept beside him. Ryan remained unconscious near the wall. Daisy stared at them for a long moment. A mother protecting her family. An abandoned dog confronting her oldest wound. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, something finally shifted. Daisy made her decision. Without a sound, she stepped toward the door. Cold air rushed inside as she pushed through the narrow opening. Snow immediately covered her paws. The wind struck her face. For one brief moment, she hesitated. Then she looked back one final time, at her puppies, at the man who had become part of their strange little pack. Then Daisy turned toward the storm and ran. The storm swallowed Daisy almost immediately. Snow lashed against her face. Wind pushed against her body hard enough to force her sideways more than once. Yet she kept running. For nearly a year, Daisy had spent her life doing the opposite, avoiding roads, avoiding houses, avoiding people. If she saw a truck, she changed direction. If she heard voices, she disappeared. Survival had taught her caution. Now survival demanded something else entirely. Trust. Or at least enough trust to gamble everything on it. Behind her, somewhere beyond the white wilderness, 2 sleeping puppies and a feverish man waited inside a forgotten hunting cabin. The image refused to leave her mind. Buddy's tiny body curled against Ryan. Molly watching over him with those serious eyes. Ryan struggling to stay awake. The memory drove her forward. Hour after hour she pushed through deep snow. Several times she lost the scent of town entirely. Several times she almost turned back. Not because she wanted to abandon them. Because old fears are stubborn things. Every road smelled like betrayal. Every distant light reminded her of the day she had been left behind. But every time doubt surfaced, another image followed. Ryan sharing food he couldn't afford to lose. Ryan talking softly to the puppies. Ryan staying awake despite exhaustion. The man had protected her family. Now it was her turn. By late afternoon, Cedar Ridge finally emerged through the storm. The town looked exhausted. Snow covered storefronts. Vehicles sat buried beneath drifts. The sidewalks were nearly empty. People moved quickly between buildings, heads lowered against the wind. Daisy slowed. Her heart pounded. The familiar fear returned. Humans. Too many humans. Too many memories. For several moments, she simply stood near the edge of town, watching, hesitating. Then she remembered why she had come, and started running. At first, nobody noticed her. A stray dog crossing a snowy street wasn't unusual. Daisy barked, loudly, repeatedly. Then she ran toward the forest, stopped, looked back, barked again. Several pedestrians glanced at her, then continued walking. A delivery driver laughed. A teenager pointed briefly before entering a store. Nobody understood. Why would they? Humans rarely expected animals to bring messages. Daisy ran back, barked again, then returned toward the forest, again, and again, and again. Meanwhile, several blocks away, Martha Jenkins was locking the front door of the diner. The elderly waitress had spent most of her life in Cedar Ridge. At 71, her silver curls remained stubbornly untamed, and her soft blue eyes still noticed details others missed. Years of serving coffee, listening to stories, and watching people had taught her something valuable. Most communication happened without words. As she stepped outside, she noticed the German Shepherd immediately. Not because Daisy was barking, because Daisy looked desperate. The dog wasn't searching for food, wasn't searching for shelter. She was searching for attention. Martha watched carefully. The dog ran toward the forest, stopped, looked back, barked, then repeated the behavior. Something clicked. Martha felt a chill, unrelated to weather. "Oh my goodness," she whispered. The realization came suddenly. The dog was trying to lead someone. Without hesitation, Martha turned around and hurried back inside.
5 minutes later, she was on the phone with Sheriff Tom Reynolds. Tom answered immediately. The sheriff hadn't been sleeping much lately. "Tom," Martha said, "I think I found something." 20 minutes later, Daisy stood in the center of town, surrounded by cautious observers. Sheriff Reynolds had arrived first. Deputy Lisa Grant stood beside him. Several volunteers gathered nearby. Everyone looked tired. Everyone looked skeptical. Tom studied Daisy carefully. The German Shepherd barked once, then ran toward the forest.
Stopped, returned, repeated. Lisa folded her arms.
"You think she knows where Ryan is?" Tom didn't answer immediately. He watched the dog, watched the urgency, the determination, the repetition. Finally, he nodded. "I think she wants us to follow." For the first time in days, hope entered the conversation. A rescue team formed quickly, not large, the weather remained dangerous, but large enough. Tom, Lisa, 3 experienced volunteers, and Daisy. The unusual guide wasted no time. The moment she realized people were moving behind her, she started running. Not too fast, not too slow, constantly checking to make sure they remained close. Several times she stopped completely until the team caught up. Then she continued. Snow continued falling. Visibility remained poor. The journey was difficult, yet for the first time they had direction. Back at the cabin, Ryan Walker struggled to remain conscious. The fever had worsened. His skin felt hot despite the cold air. His thoughts drifted in strange directions. Sometimes he believed he heard Emily's voice. Sometimes he thought he saw sunlight through the windows. Neither was real. Only the puppies were real. Buddy slept against his chest. Molly lay beside his injured leg. Both puppies radiated precious warmth. Ryan forced his eyes open. The cabin blurred. He looked down at them and found a reason to stay awake, not for himself, for them. The realization surprised him. For years after Emily's death, Ryan had lived without purpose. Now 2 puppies had somehow given him one. He smiled weakly. "You 2 picked the wrong guy," he whispered. Buddy shifted slightly in his sleep. Ryan laughed softly, then coughed. The effort exhausted him. Outside, daylight faded again. The second night approached. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere felt smaller, more fragile. Ryan knew time was running short, yet he refused to surrender. Every few minutes he forced himself awake, forced himself to move, forced himself to keep breathing, because if he stopped trying, the puppies would be alone. Miles away, Daisy continued leading the rescue team through the forest. Several volunteers had begun believing, not because anyone explained it, because the dog never hesitated. She knew exactly where she was going. The storm continued fighting them, but Daisy fought harder. Finally, near sunset, she stopped, completely. The rescue team nearly walked into her. Tom stepped forward, his eyes narrowed. Through the swirling snow, a shape emerged, a structure, small, weathered, half hidden among the trees. The hunting cabin. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The building appeared almost ghost-like behind the falling snow. Then Lisa pointed. "I see it!" Tom's pulse quickened. Hope and fear collided inside him, because finding the cabin meant finding answers. The sheriff tightened his grip on his flashlight. Daisy stood beside him, breathing heavily, watching, waiting. And together they stared through the storm at the cabin hidden among the pines. The rescue team reached the cabin just as darkness settled over the forest. For one terrible moment, Sheriff Tom Reynolds feared they were too late. The old hunting cabin stood silent beneath the storm. Snow had nearly buried the lower walls. Wind pushed through the trees with a low, mournful whistle. Daisy reached the door first. She barked sharply, then again. Inside, Ryan Walker opened his eyes. The sound felt distant at first, part of a dream, another fever hallucination. Then he heard voices, human voices, real voices. His heart stumbled. Buddy immediately jumped to his feet. Molly followed. The puppies rushed toward the door. Moments later, it burst open. Cold air flooded inside. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Sheriff Reynolds entered first. Deputy Lisa Grant was directly behind him. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Relief hit the room too hard for words. Tom had seen many rescues during his career. Few affected him this way.
Ryan sat against the wall, looking exhausted, pale and thinner than he had only days earlier. The puppies were pressed against him. Daisy stood protectively nearby. The image told an entire story before anyone asked a single question. "Good Lord," Tom finally said. Ryan managed a weak smile. "Took you long enough?" Tom laughed despite himself. The sound broke the tension immediately. Several hours later, Ryan was on his way to Cedar Ridge Medical Center. The small hospital sat on the edge of town, beneath snow-covered pines. It wasn't large, but it served the surrounding communities faithfully. Dr. Ethan Mercer met the rescue team at the entrance. Ethan was 48 years old, tall and lean, with dark skin, intelligent brown eyes, and short, cropped black hair beginning to gray near the temples. Years of emergency medicine had given him calm hands and an unusually steady voice. He rarely rushed. He rarely panicked. Patients trusted him because he never treated fear as something embarrassing. After examining Ryan, Ethan delivered the news. The leg wasn't broken. The shoulder would heal. The infection had become serious but treatable. Most importantly, Ryan was going to survive. The entire town seemed to exhale at once. The weeks that followed arrived slowly. Winter gradually loosened its grip on Cedar Ridge. The snow remained deep, but the days grew longer. The sun lingered a little later each evening. Ryan spent much of January recovering. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. People visited. Sheriff Reynolds stopped by regularly. Lisa brought updates from town. Martha delivered homemade soup despite repeated instructions from hospital staff that Ryan already had food. The attention felt strange, comforting, and slightly uncomfortable. Grief had convinced Ryan for a long time that isolation was strength. Now he was beginning to suspect he had been wrong. One afternoon, while still using a cane, Ryan asked the question everyone expected. "How are the dogs?" Martha smiled immediately. "They're doing fine." The answer relieved him more than he expected. Daisy and the puppies had returned to the old barn near the forest after the rescue. Nobody forced them into a shelter. Nobody trapped them. Ryan had made that request personally. "They helped save my life," he told everyone. "They've earned the right to choose." The statement surprised some people. Not Daisy, if she could understand it. By early February, Ryan returns to his cabin. The lake remained frozen. The famous wooden bench still waited beside the shoreline. Everything looked exactly the same, yet nothing felt the same. The first thing Ryan did after unpacking was fill a large bowl with water. The second thing he did was leave food beside the old barn, not near enough to pressure Daisy, not close enough to feel like a trap, just available. A simple offering. No expectations attached. The next morning, the bowl was empty. Ryan smiled. The routine continued. Every day, food, fresh water, then distance. Weeks passed. Winter slowly weakened. Buddy and Molly grew rapidly. The puppies were no longer tiny. Buddy had become gangly and energetic, with oversized paws that suggested an impressive future. His curiosity remained limitless. Molly matured differently. She became observant, thoughtful, and surprisingly patient. While Buddy rushed toward every new experience, Molly preferred understanding it first. Both increasingly treated Ryan like family. Whenever he approached the barn, the young dogs greeted him enthusiastically. Buddy often arrived first. Molly followed moments later. Daisy remained different. She accepted the food, accepted the water, accepted Ryan's presence. But she never fully approached, never crossed the invisible line she maintained. At least, not yet. Ryan understood. Trust had been broken long before he arrived. Healing required time.
So he waited. Spring finally arrived in March. The transformation happened gradually. Snow retreated from the roads, patches of green emerged beneath melting drifts, birdsong returned to the forest. The lake began shedding its ice. Life moved forward. One afternoon, Ryan found himself walking toward the bench. The same shoreline, the same place where grief had trapped him for 2 years. Yet the walk felt different. Not because Emily mattered less, because life mattered more. He sat down carefully. The lake shimmered beneath soft spring sunlight. A breeze moved across the water. For several minutes he simply watched. No memories, no regrets, no conversations with ghosts, just the present. A movement near his feet drew his attention. Buddy. The young German shepherd flopped dramatically onto the ground beneath the bench. Ryan laughed. Seconds later, Molly appeared and curled comfortably nearby. Neither asked permission. Neither seemed concerned about personal boundaries. Ryan reached down and scratched Buddy's ears. The dog practically melted. Then another shape appeared. Daisy. The German shepherd mother approached slowly, as always, carefully, thoughtfully. She stopped several yards away. Not close, not distant. Somewhere in between. Ryan didn't call her, didn't move toward her, didn't reach out. He simply sat, the same way he always had. For the first time since Emily's death, the bench no longer belonged to grief. It belonged to the present. Ryan looked across the lake, then toward the dogs. Buddy sleeping beneath the bench, Molly resting nearby. Daisy watching quietly from a short distance away, not too close, but no longer too far. A year earlier, Ryan would have spent this moment looking backward. Today, he looked ahead, toward tomorrow, toward possibilities, toward life. The lake shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. The dogs rested peacefully beside him. And for a man who had spent years living inside loneliness, that was miracle enough. Sometimes we think miracles have to look extraordinary. We expect them to arrive with dramatic signs, perfect timing, or impossible events. But this story reminds us that many of God's greatest miracles arrive quietly. A lonely man who had stopped living and only existed. A mother dog who had every reason to distrust people. 2 curious puppies who simply followed their hearts. None of them set out to change a life, yet together they did. What moves me most is that healing began the moment someone chose not to give up. Ryan kept fighting when it would have been easier to surrender. Daisy chose trust when fear would have been safer. In everyday life, many of us carry grief, disappointment, or loneliness that no one else can see. Yet God often works through unexpected companions, small acts of kindness, and second chances we never planned for. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from and what part of this story stayed with you the most. And if you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel. May God bless you, protect your loved ones, strengthen your heart, and remind you that even in the longest winter, hope is never truly lost.